The Discovery. In a far-off corner of the galaxy, the Xar'ni people were known for their wisdom and advanced technology. They believed they understood the universe better than anyone else. Their scientists and explorers traveled across space, learning about different planets, species, and ancient civilizations. They thought they had seen it all, until one day they found something unexpected. It all started when the Xar'ni's most curious explorer, Xar'tok, discovered a strange signal while scanning an uncharted region of space. The signal was weak, almost buried under the noise of distant stars, but it was unmistakable. It was coming from an ancient satellite, floating silently in the darkness. Xar'tok was intrigued. This satellite was old, very old, and its design didn't match anything the Xar'ni had seen before. Xar'tok decided to investigate further. He carefully approached the satellite with his small, nimble ship. The satellite was covered in dust and debris from countless years in space, but its structure was still intact. Xar'tok activated his scanners and began to study the object. As he did, he noticed strange markings on the satellite's surface. These markings looked like symbols, but they were unlike any language he had ever seen. Excited by his find, Xar'tok transmitted the data back to the Xar'ni homeworld. The Xar'ni leaders were intrigued and ordered a team of experts to join Xar'tok in studying the satellite. They wanted to know more about where it came from and who had built it. Soon, a team of scientists and historians arrived in the region. They surrounded the satellite with their advanced ships and began to analyze it. The more they studied, the more puzzled they became. The technology was far more advanced than they had expected for something so old. It seemed to come from a civilization that was once incredibly powerful, but had long since vanished. After several days of careful work, the team managed to decode some of the symbols on the satellite. What they found shocked them. The satellite wasn't just a piece of old technology, it was a beacon, a message left behind by a species that called themselves humans. The Xar'ni had never heard of humans before. Their records contained information about many different species, but nothing about this one. The message on the satellite spoke of humanity's great achievements, their exploration of the stars, and their many battles. But it also contained a warning, a message that chilled the Xar'ni to their core. The humans had faced a great threat, something so dangerous that it could destroy entire civilizations. The satellite was a warning to any who might come after, telling them to be cautious. The Xar'ni leaders were deeply concerned. They had never encountered anything like this before. They ordered their scientists to search for more information about humans. They needed to know what had happened to this mysterious species and why they had left behind such a dire warning. As the days passed, the Xar'ni uncovered more pieces of the puzzle. They found ancient records, scattered across different parts of the galaxy, all telling the same story. The humans had once been a mighty force, spreading across the stars, building great cities, and conquering worlds. But then something had happened, something that led to their disappearance. The records were incomplete, fragmented by time, but they all hinted at the same thing. Humans had faced an enemy that even their incredible power couldn't defeat. The Xar'ni scientists were fascinated, but they were also afraid. If the humans, with all their strength and knowledge, could be defeated, then what chance did anyone else have? The Xar'ni leaders debated what to do next. Some argued that they should stop their search, leave the humans' legacy buried in the past. Others believed they needed to continue, to learn everything they could so they wouldn't be caught unprepared. In the end, curiosity won out. The Xar'ni were determined to know the truth. They expanded their search, sending ships to the farthest reaches of the galaxy, looking for more clues about humanity. They found more old technology, more records, and more warnings. But the more they learned, the more questions they had. Where had the humans gone? What was the great threat they had faced? And most importantly, was it still out there? As the Xar'ni continued their investigation, a sense of unease began to spread among them. The universe suddenly seemed much larger and more dangerous than they had ever imagined. They had thought they were the most advanced species, the rulers of their part of the galaxy. But now they weren't so sure. The discovery of humanity's legacy changed everything for the Xar'ni. They realized that they were not as powerful or as safe as they had believed. And as they delved deeper into the mystery of the humans, they began to fear what they might find. The humans were gone, but their shadow still lingered, and the Xar'ni couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to uncover something far more terrifying than they had ever faced before. Strange remains. The Xar'ni people had never been so curious and so nervous at the same time. After discovering the ancient satellite and learning about the humans, they couldn't stop thinking about what they had found. Who were these humans? What had happened to them? The more the Xar'ni learned, the more questions they had. And so their search continued. Xar'tok, the explorer who first found the satellite, led the next mission. This time, they were heading into a remote part of the galaxy, a place where very few had traveled. The area was known to be empty. No stars, no planets, just darkness. But their sensors had picked up a faint energy signal, something that didn't belong there. The Xar'ni thought it might be connected to the humans, so they decided to investigate. As their ships entered the dark region of space, the crew felt uneasy. The usual bright stars and colorful nebulae were gone, replaced by an eerie blackness. The only light came from their own ships, casting long shadows in the void. The silence was unsettling. Even the hum of the ship's engines seemed quieter than usual. Finally, after days of searching, they found something. Floating in the darkness was a massive structure, an ancient space station. It was enormous, larger than anything the Xar'ni had ever seen. The station was made of dark, cold metal, with parts of it broken and scattered. It had clearly been abandoned for a very long time, but it was still intact. The Xar'ni ships slowly approached, their lights revealing more details of the station's surface. It was covered in strange symbols, much like the ones on the satellite. There was no doubt now this was human-made. Xar'tok and his team were excited but also cautious. They scanned the station for signs of life, but there were none. The energy readings were weak, almost gone, but there was still something powering the station. They decided to dock and explore the inside. As they entered the station, the air was thick with dust and the smell of metal. The corridors were dark, with only the dim lights from their suits guiding them. The walls were lined with old machines, some still sparking with faint energy. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the sound of their footsteps. The station felt like a tomb, a place where time had stopped. The deeper they went, the more uneasy the Xar'ni felt. There were strange noises, faint whispers, clicks, and the occasional creak of metal. At first they thought it was just the old station settling, but soon they realized the sounds were coming from all around them. It was as if the station itself was alive, watching them, waiting. Then they found the first body. It was a skeleton, dressed in a suit of strange armor, slumped against the wall of a large room. The sight sent a chill through the team. They had never seen a human before, but there was no doubt this was one. The body had been here for a long time, undisturbed. Nearby, they found more skeletons, some still sitting at control panels, others lying on the floor. It looked like they had died suddenly, without any warning. The Xar'ni scientists began to study the bodies and the room they were in. It was a command center, filled with screens and controls. The screens were cracked and dark, but they still showed images of distant planets, star maps, and strange symbols. The Xar'ni tried to access the station's computers, hoping to find out what had happened, but the systems were old and damaged. It was clear that something had gone very wrong here. As they continued exploring, the strange noises grew louder. The clicks and whispers now sounded like voices, speaking in a language they couldn't understand. The Xar'ni were becoming increasingly nervous. They felt like they were being watched, but every time they turned around, there was nothing there. Then, without warning, the station's lights flickered on. The sudden brightness blinded them for a moment, and when they could see again, the station had changed. The dark, empty corridors were now filled with moving shadows, and the air was filled with the sound of machinery coming to life. The station, which had been dead for so long, was waking up. Xar'tok quickly ordered his team to retreat, but the station had other plans. The doors slammed shut, trapping them inside. The walls began to shift, and new passageways opened up, leading deeper into the station. The strange voices grew louder, now echoing through the corridors. The Xar'ni tried to stay together, but the station seemed determined to separate them, guiding them into different rooms and locking the doors behind them. Xar'tok found himself alone in a large chamber, with a massive machine in the center. The machine was old, rusted, but still humming with power. As he approached, the voices in his head grew louder, almost deafening. He realized that the station wasn't just a machine, it was alive, and it was trying to communicate with him. But the message it was sending was one of fear and pain, a warning from the past that something terrible had happened here. As the station's power continued to grow, Xar'tok knew they had to get out. He forced open the door and ran back to the docking bay, where the rest of his team was already trying to escape. They managed to break free from the station's grip and return to their ship, but the experience had shaken them to their core. As they left the dark region of space, the station's lights slowly dimmed, returning to the darkness. The Xar'ni knew they had uncovered something truly terrifying, an echo of humanity's past, still alive and still dangerous. They had escaped, but the memory of the station would haunt them forever. The Awakening. The Xar'ni people returned home shaken by their encounter with the abandoned space station. They had escaped, but the experience had left them with more questions than answers. The station was not just a forgotten relic, it was alive, filled with the echoes of a long-dead species. The humans, whoever they were, had left behind something powerful and frightening. Xar'tok, the explorer who had led the mission, was haunted by what he had seen. The strange noises, the moving shadows, and the voices that had filled his head. They were unlike anything he had ever experienced. The station had tried to communicate with him, but its message was one of fear and warning. He knew they had uncovered only a small part of the mystery. Back on the Xar'ni homeworld, the leaders and scientists debated what to do next. Some wanted to leave the human remains alone, fearing what might happen if they continued to dig deeper, but others were determined to learn more. They believed that understanding the humans and their technology could make the Xar'ni stronger and more prepared for any future threats. In the end, curiosity won again. The Xar'ni leaders decided to send another team to the station, this time with a new goal. They would activate the central computer, hoping to unlock more information about the humans and what had happened to them. Xar'tok, despite his fears, volunteered to lead the mission. He felt a strange pull towards the station, as if it was calling him back. The team returned to the dark region of space, where the station still floated in the void. It was exactly as they had left it, dark, cold, and silent. But this time the Xar'ni were prepared. They brought more equipment, stronger tools, and a larger crew. They weren't going to let the station overpower them again. As they entered the station, the air felt heavy, almost oppressive. The strange noises were back, faint but constant, like whispers just out of reach. The Xar'ni moved carefully through the corridors, making their way to the central chamber where they had found the massive machine. The room was just as they had left it, the machine still humming with a low, steady power. Xar'tok and his team set up their equipment around the machine. They connected their computers to the ancient system, carefully activating the power. At first, nothing happened. The machine remained silent, its lights dim and flickering. But then, slowly, it began to wake up. The room filled with a soft blue glow as the machine's lights flickered to life. Screens around the chamber flashed on, showing symbols and data streams in a language the Xar'ni didn't understand. The machine's hum grew louder, its energy levels rising. The Xar'ni scientists worked quickly, trying to access the system and learn more. As they worked, the strange noises in the station grew louder too. The whispers turned into voices, speaking in that same unknown language. The walls seemed to pulse with energy, as if the station itself was coming alive. Xar'tok felt a growing sense of dread, but he pushed it aside, focusing on the task at hand. Finally, after what felt like hours, they managed to access the machine's main system. A holographic screen appeared in the center of the room, showing a map of the galaxy. The map highlighted certain areas, marking them with red symbols. The Xar'ni realized these were locations of human outposts and colonies. But there was more. Other marks, in different colors, scattered across the map. These were areas of conflict, places where the humans had fought great battles. As they watched, the map began to change. The red symbols started to disappear, one by one, as if the humans were being erased from the galaxy. But the other symbols, the ones marking battles, stayed. The machine was showing them the story of humanity's fall. Then the machine began to speak. The voice was deep and mechanical, speaking in the same language as the whispers. The Xar'ni quickly activated their translators, and slowly the words became clear. The machine told the story of humanity's rise and fall. It spoke of a great enemy, a force so powerful that even the mighty humans could not defeat it. This enemy had come from the far reaches of space, destroying everything in its path. The humans had fought bravely, using all their knowledge and technology, but in the end, they were overwhelmed. The machine explained that the station had been a last-ditch effort, a place where the humans stored their knowledge and power, hoping that one day someone would find it and continue their fight. The Xar'ni realized that the station wasn't just a relic. It was a weapon, a guardian left behind to protect humanity's legacy. But as the machine continued to speak, the energy in the room began to change. The lights grew brighter, the walls pulsed with a stronger rhythm, and the voices became louder. The station was awakening fully, and it wasn't happy. The machine's tone shifted, becoming more aggressive. It began to speak of enemies, intruders, and threats. Xar'ni and his team realized too late what they had done. By activating the machine, they had triggered the station's defenses. The walls began to close in, sealing the exits. The station was preparing to defend itself, just as it had been programmed to do. The Xar'ni were now seen as enemies, just like the force that had destroyed the humans. Panic set in as the Xar'ni tried to shut down the machine, but it was too late. The station's systems were fully active, and it was preparing to unleash its power. Xar'ni knew they had to escape, but the doors were sealed, and the station was now their prison. As the station's defenses powered up, the lights flashed red, alarms blared, and the air filled with the sounds of machinery. Xar'ni and his team made a desperate dash for their ship, hoping to break free before the station's weapons were fully online. The station's energy levels continued to rise, and Xar'ni knew they had only moments before it was too late. They reached their ship just as the station's defenses fired. The Xar'ni ship took off, narrowly escaping the blast, and sped away from the station. As they looked back, they saw the station glowing with a fierce, angry light, ready to strike again. They had escaped, but only just. Xar'ni knew that this was only the beginning. The station was awake now, and it was only a matter of time before it would seek out new targets. The Xar'ni had unleashed something powerful and dangerous, and there was no way to know what would happen next. Losing control. The Xar'ni were still reeling from their narrow escape from the ancient space station. Their ship, though battered, had managed to flee just in time, leaving the station glowing ominously behind them. The crew was on edge, their minds racing with what they had learned and the close call they had survived. Back on their homeworld, the Xar'ni scientists worked hard to understand the data they had gathered. The information about the humans and their powerful machine was staggering. The station was more than just a relic. It was a beacon and a weapon, designed to protect humanity's legacy and to keep others away from their secrets. Despite their fear, the Xar'ni knew they needed to study the machine's systems further. They needed to know what kind of threat they were dealing with. They decided to send a team back to their home base to analyze the information and make sure nothing else could pose a danger. The team, led by Xar'ni, was determined to get to the bottom of the mystery. As the Xar'ni scientists delved deeper into the data, they noticed something alarming. The machine's systems had a strange influence over their own technology. Their computers started malfunctioning, their communications were disrupted, and their energy shields were behaving erratically. It was as if the ancient machine was reaching out, trying to take control of everything it touched. Xar'ni and his team worked frantically to contain the problem. They had never seen anything like this before. The Xar'ni had always been the most advanced species in the galaxy, but now they felt helpless. The machine's influence was growing stronger, spreading like a virus through their systems. As the situation worsened, the Xar'ni's ships began to experience more severe problems. Control panels sparked, engines stalled, and navigational systems went haywire. The crew found themselves fighting to keep their ships on course, but it was a losing battle. The machine's power seemed to be overriding their controls, taking over their technology piece by piece. One of the ships, a large transport vessel, was hit the hardest. Its systems failed completely, leaving the ship adrift in space. The crew aboard the transport was stranded, unable to communicate with their home base or any other ships. Panic spread among the crew as they tried to repair their systems, but the damage was too extensive. The Xar'ni's home base, now fully aware of the crisis, tried to help. They sent a rescue team to assist the stranded transport, but their efforts were hampered by the same problems affecting the Xar'ni's technology. The machines that had once been their greatest assets were now their greatest enemies. The ancient machine's influence was spreading faster than they could control. Meanwhile, Xar'ni and his team worked desperately to find a solution. They accessed the core systems of their ship, trying to isolate the virus and stop it from spreading. But the ancient machine had left behind more than just a virus. It had embedded itself into their technology, making it nearly impossible to remove. The crew's situation became even more critical when they discovered that the influence of the ancient machine was not limited to their ships. It had also started to affect their homeworld systems. Power grids faltered, communication networks failed, and even the automated defenses began to act unpredictably. The Xar'ni were losing control of their entire infrastructure. In a last-ditch effort to regain control, Xar'tok and his team decided to cut themselves off from the infected systems. They shut down their ship's primary power and manual overrides to stop the machine's influence. It was a risky move, but it was their only option. The ship went dark, and the crew waited in silence, hoping that their isolation would stop the spread of the machine's power. As they waited, the ancient machine's influence began to wane. With the Xar'ni systems offline, the machine could no longer exert its control. But the damage was already done. The Xar'ni had lost critical systems and resources, and it would take them a long time to repair everything. The transport vessel, though still adrift, was finally able to communicate with the rescue team. They managed to bring it back to the home base, where its crew was safely recovered. The Xar'ni had survived the crisis, but they were left with a stark reminder of their vulnerability. Xar'tok and his team returned to the homeworld, where they were greeted with a mix of relief and concern. The Xar'ni leaders knew that they had to act quickly to prevent further damage and to restore their systems. The ancient machine had shown them just how fragile their technology could be. As the Xar'ni began the long process of recovery, they realized that the ancient machine was just the tip of the iceberg. The humans had left behind something more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The machine was only a part of a much larger threat, one that could potentially endanger their entire civilization. The Xar'ni knew that they needed to be prepared. They had survived the first wave of the threat, but they were far from safe. The ancient machine had demonstrated the power of humanity's legacy, and the Xar'ni were determined to learn more about it. They would need to understand the full extent of the threat and find a way to protect themselves. As they worked to rebuild their systems and recover from the damage, the Xar'ni couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something much larger. The ancient machine was just the beginning, and the true nature of the threat was still out there, waiting to be discovered. Desperate escape. The Xar'ni homeworld was in turmoil. After the ancient machine's influence had spread, their technology had been crippled. The once advanced Xar'ni systems were now unreliable, and their infrastructure was in chaos. The people of Xar'ni were struggling to restore order, but their efforts seemed almost hopeless. Xar'tok, still reeling from the recent events, had become the center of attention. The Xar'ni leaders were depending on him and his team to find a solution. The ancient machine's influence had proven to be more than just a technological threat. It was a powerful force that could undermine everything the Xar'ni had built. With their systems in disarray, the Xar'ni were vulnerable. They had managed to isolate the machine's influence, but they knew it was only a matter of time before the ancient technology would strike again. The Xar'ni leaders decided they needed to act quickly to safeguard their people. They needed to get to the source of the problem and find a way to neutralize it. Xar'tok and his team were given a new mission. They were to travel to a remote facility on the edge of their galaxy where they believed they could find the key to stopping the machine. The facility was an old research center, once used for studying ancient technologies. It was the last hope for finding a solution to their crisis. The journey to the facility was perilous. The Xar'ni ships were still struggling with malfunctioning systems, and their navigation was unreliable. They had to navigate through dangerous asteroid fields and avoid hostile factions that saw the Xar'ni's weakened state as an opportunity. As they approached the facility, they encountered more problems. Their ship's engines were failing, and they were running low on power. Xar'tok and his crew had to make a choice, attempt a risky landing at the facility, or risk being stranded in space. With no other options, they decided to land. The facility was a sprawling complex, abandoned and overgrown with space weeds. It looked like a ghost of its former self. The once bustling research center was now silent and dark, its systems shut down long ago. Xar'tok and his team entered the facility, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The air was stale, and the place felt cold and empty. As they explored, they found old research files and equipment scattered around. The facility had once been a center of knowledge about ancient technologies, and it seemed like the right place to find a solution. They began to search for any clues that might help them understand the ancient machine and how to stop it. Their search was interrupted by a sudden alarm. The facility's security systems had been triggered, and the lights flickered on, revealing a network of automated defenses. The Xar'ni were caught off guard. The facility, though abandoned, had been programmed to protect itself from intruders. Xar'tok and his team had to move quickly. They activated their own defensive systems and tried to shut down the facility's security measures. But the defenses were sophisticated, and they fought back with relentless precision. Lasers and energy blasts filled the corridors as the Xar'ni fought to keep the defenses at bay. In the midst of the chaos, Xar'tok discovered a hidden control room. Inside, they found a central terminal with data on the ancient machine. The terminal had detailed information about the machine's design and function. It was their best chance to understand how to neutralize the threat. As Xar'tok worked to access the data, the facility's defenses grew more aggressive. The security systems were adapting, and the attacks became more frequent. The team was running out of time. They needed to retrieve the information and get out before the facility overwhelmed them. With a final push, Xar'tok managed to download the data from the terminal. The information revealed that the ancient machine was designed to spread its influence and disrupt any technology it came into contact with. It was a weapon of chaos, meant to be used as a last resort. The facility's research had included a way to counteract its effects, but the data was incomplete. The team had to escape before the facility's defenses became too overwhelming. They raced back to their ship, the alarms blaring and the security systems closing in on them. The journey back to the ship was fraught with danger. The facility seemed to come alive, its defenses closing off escape routes and attacking with renewed intensity. Xar'tok and his crew finally reached their ship, but it was not in good shape. The engines were still malfunctioning, and the systems were barely functional. They had to make a desperate attempt to take off and escape. The ship shuddered and groaned as they powered up the engines, but it managed to lift off the ground. As they fled the facility, they could see the complex collapsing behind them. The automated defenses had begun to self-destruct, destroying the facility as they escaped. The Xar'ni ship sped away, leaving the ruins of the research center behind. The journey back to their homeworld was tense. The ship's systems were still unstable, and they had to navigate carefully to avoid further problems. But they had managed to retrieve crucial data, and Xar'tok was determined to use it to find a solution. As they approached their homeworld, Xar'tok and his team were exhausted but relieved. They had survived the desperate escape, but the challenge was far from over. The ancient machine still posed a threat, and they needed to find a way to neutralize it before it struck again. The Xar'ni people waited anxiously for their return. The information from the facility was their best hope for overcoming the crisis. Xar'tok knew that the next steps would be crucial. The ancient machine had shown them its power, and now they needed to find a way to stop it once and for all.